In the lavish courts of medieval England, pale skin wasn't just beauty, it was proof of nobility. Sunlight was for peasants, but a white porcelain face meant you were untouched by labor. To achieve this ethereal glow, women turned to a deadly secret, a mixture of white, lead, vinegar, and chalk, known as It gave the illusion of perfection. Smooth, radiant, and cold as moonlight. Lady Marian of Kent was admired throughout the kingdom. Her complexion, flawless and ghostly, was whispered about from castle to castle. She would sit for hours as her maids layered her face in the poisonous paste, each stroke stealing a little more of her health. Her hair began to fall, her teeth blackened, and she fainted often during court banquets. Physicians called it noble fragility, unaware that her beauty routine was slowly killing her. As months passed, her skin peeled beneath the layers, yet she refused to appear barefaced. It was better to die beautiful than live in disgrace. When she finally succumbed, her face remained eerily perfect, smooth and pale, even in death. Servants whispered that she looked like a marble statue. But the truth was darker. The poison that made her beautiful had embalmed her from within. The glow she chased became her death mask, and her vanity turned her into her own monument. Fashion in medieval Europe was a cage disguised as art. A woman's worth was often measured by how small her waist appeared. Beneath layers of silk and lace, women wore whalebone corsets, drawn tighter with each breath until ribs creaked and lungs begged for air. Lady Isabel of Orleans was envied for her tiny waist, the width of a man's hand. Her maids pulled her corset laces so fiercely that her vision often blurred. Eating was nearly impossible, and her heartbeat fluttered like a trapped bird. Yet, in the candlelit halls of the royal court, she moved gracefully, praised as the embodiment of elegance. One fateful evening during the Duke's masquerade, Isabel danced with her husband beneath chandeliers of gold. As the violins swelled, she suddenly staggered. A sharp crack echoed. A rib had broken, piercing her lung. She collapsed in his arms, gasping as her corset refused to loosen. When they finally cut through the silk, it was too late. Her death was described as tragic, but beautiful. Courtiers whispered she had died gracefully, with perfect posture. They buried her wearing the same corset that had taken her life, the final irony. The fashion that defined her worth became her coffin, and her story a cautionary whisper among ladies who still tightened their laces in envy. In royal courts, beauty was politics. Queens waged silent wars, with rouge and powder, each striving to appear younger, fairer, more divine. The most prized secret was a mixture of lead, arsenic, and mercury, a cosmetic that promised perfection but delivered death. Queen Adeline of Navarre was the jewel of Europe. Her skin shimmered with an unnatural brilliance, admired by poets and painters alike. Servants mixed her powders daily, their hands trembling as they prepared the lethal blend. Over time, Adeline's headaches worsened, her hair thinned, and her smile grew faint. Yet the praise continued, and she believed that beauty demanded suffering. As years passed, her reflection betrayed her dark circles beneath her eyes, cracked lips, trembling fingers. The royal physicians prescribed purity masks made with more mercury, deepening her decline. Soon she could no longer stand without fainting. Yet she refused to appear bare. A queen, she said, must look divine, even in death. When she finally died, her face remained eerily flawless, smooth, pale, and cold as porcelain.
Courtiers marveled at her preserved beauty, never realizing it was her own makeup that mummified her.
The kingdom mourned its most beautiful queen, but her vanity became legend, proof that even royalty cannot outshine death. In the shadowed streets of medieval London, beauty was defined by sickness. A pale face meant privilege, color meant corruption. To appear noble, women drank vinegar mixed with crushed bones and chalk, starving themselves of life in the name of elegance. Marjorie, a merchant's daughter, dreamed of marrying above her station. She spent her savings on powders, swallowing deadly mixtures in secret. Each week, her skin grew lighter and her health darker. Her mother begged her to stop, But Marjorie only smiled, weak and trembling. "They'll see I'm worthy," she whispered. One morning, she attended a noble gathering. Her fragile frame draped in silk, her face white as ivory. Whispers rippled through the crowd, admiration and envy intertwined. But as she rose to dance, her body gave way. She collapsed, her lips ashen, her pulse gone. They buried her in the gown she had saved for her wedding, her complexion pale and perfect, exactly as she wanted. But the priest who blessed her coffin muttered softly, "She chased beauty until it caught her." In death, Marjorie finally became what she longed for, a noblewoman in appearance, a victim in truth. In the court of Burgundy, fashion was a weapon. One could rise or fall by the cut of a gown. Nobles wore tight collars, jeweled chokers, and steel hoops, designed to elevate posture and display grace. For Countess Isolde, elegance was everything. Her gowns shimmered with imported silk, her jewels glittered like stars. Yet her favorite accessory was a velvet choker lined with golden pearls, so tight that her breath came shallow. "Beauty requires discipline," she often said. Her servants knew better, but dared not speak. At the Duke's midsummer feast, Isolde appeared radiant, her neck high, her movements regal. As she curtsied before the Duke, her choker caught against the metal clasp of her gown. The tension snapped. The velvet tightened like a noose. Gasps filled the hall as her eyes widened in panic. But before anyone could reach her, she collapsed, strangled by her own vanity. Painters later immortalized her, serene, graceful, forever youthful. They never painted the bruise hidden beneath the pearls. The silk that crowned her pride became her punishment, a final lesson carved into fashion's cruel history. In the dim glow of candlelight, noble women prepared for their evenings with rituals that resembled alchemy. The most desired secret among the elite was Venetian veil powder, a mysterious cosmetic that promised to hide every flaw. What most didn't know, or refused to believe, was that it contained arsenic and belladonna, two poisons as beautiful as they were lethal. Lady Serafina Florence was known for her luminous complexion, smooth as ivory beneath her laced veil. Her admirers said she looked untouched by time, but each morning, as her maid applied the powder, her body weakened, her eyes watered, her nails darkened, and her breath grew shallow. Still, she persisted. To appear flawless before her suitors meant everything. Her beauty was her currency, her power. Yet one evening, during a grand banquet, she began to bleed from her nose. Her skin turned gray beneath the powder, and her hand trembled as she raised her cup. Moments later, she collapsed, her veil falling like a curtain over her lifeless face. Servants later discovered the jars of powder hidden in her chambers, their labels written in Latin, "Venenum pulchritudinus," poison of beauty. The veil that once symbolized grace had masked her slow decay. In the end, the very thing that made her admired had devoured her from within. In medieval France, appearance was everything. A woman's pale, spotless complexion was her greatest asset and her most dangerous ambition. Apothecaries sold expensive powders made from lead oxide and crushed pearl, claiming they could erase any imperfection. Lady Cradis, a young baroness, spent hours before her mirror, applying layer upon layer of the gleaming dust. She called it her armor of charm. With each application, her skin burned faintly, but she dismissed it as a sign of purity. Over the years, her body began to betray her. Her joints ached, her hair fell in silver strands, and her laughter turned brittle. One spring morning, she awoke to find her reflection changed. Her once radiant face was now pale in a way no powder could fix waxen and sickly. Desperate, she applied even more, masking the evidence of her illness. By the time the physician arrived, her veins had blackened beneath her skin. When she died, her face was covered in the same powder she loved, flawless and smooth. Mourners whispered that she looked angelic, but the truth was cruel. The beauty she crafted had become her burial mask. And her mirror, her most silent accomplice long before the concept of modern skincare, medieval Europe embraced bizarre inventions in the name of youth. Among the most feared was the iron beauty mask, a cold, metal mold shaped to fit the wearer's face, locked tightly to smooth wrinkles and perfect symmetry. Countess Eleanor of Aragon owned one such mask, forged by an Italian craftsman who promised eternal youth. Each night, her servants would fasten the device around her head, the iron pressing into her cheeks and temples.
She endured the agony in silence, whispering prayers that beauty might justify the pain.
But the mask trapped more than her face. It trapped her flesh. Blood stopped circulating.
Sores festered beneath the metal.
Her maids, forbidden to question her rituals, cleaned the device daily, hiding their horror. After months, Eleanor fell ill, her face permanently scarred. Still, she refused to stop. One night, the lock jammed. The mask could not be removed. By morning, she was dead, suffocated, her face crushed into the very mold she believed would preserve her youth. Her corpse was buried with the mask still attached, and her story became a whispered warning. When beauty becomes obsession, the mirror turns to iron. In an age when bathing was rare, perfume was a necessity, but the nobles took it further. To mask the stench of unwashed bodies, perfumers created oils from civet and distilled arsenic, prized for their longevity and luxury. Lady Vivian of Burgundy adored these fragrances. Her chambers overflowed with crystal vials, scents of rose, musk, and lilac, each richer than the last. Her signature perfume, Essence of the Moon, was so potent that servants fainted when they entered her room. She wore it daily, believing it made her irresistible. But the scent that enchanted others was slowly poisoning her. The oils seeped through her skin, blackening her veins. Her lungs burned, her throat tightened, and her once melodic voice faded to a rasp. Yet she refused to live without her perfume. A lady must never smell of death,
She told her maid,
unaware that death had already claimed her scent. When she died, her body still exuded the fragrance sweet and heavy, lingering for days. Guests at her chamber smelled divine, not realizing they were inhaling the same toxins that had ended her life. In the end, her beauty became a fragrance of the grave. In the medieval courts of Spain, beauty was measured by delicacy. The thinner and smaller a woman's frame, the closer she was to divine perfection. Mothers starved their daughters into fragility, binding their bodies in tight girdles and bone stays that reshaped their ribs and hips. Isabella, the youngest daughter of a nobleman, grew up believing pain was refinement. At 12, she was bound daily in a corset of bone and iron, her meals reduced to crumbs. Her father boasted that she would marry a prince, for her waist was no larger than a chalice. By 16, her organs shifted painfully beneath her ribs. She fainted often, her lips bloodless, her back arched unnaturally. Yet suitors praised her posture and heavenly grace. One evening, while walking through the palace gardens, her body finally gave out. She fell silently among the roses, her heart crushed by her own ribs. The next day, the court mourned the most beautiful girl in Spain. Artists painted her as an angel, delicate and pure. None showed the bruises hidden beneath her gown. In truth, Isabella was not a victim of illness, but of expectation. Her body had become the altar upon which society sacrificed her. During the late Middle Ages, pallor was synonymous with refinement. Women of noble lineage deliberately sought a complexion so pale it verged on death itself. To achieve this, they consumed vinegar tonics and mixtures laced with powdered lead,
weakening their immune systems while draining all color from their faces.
Lady Eleanor of Gloucester became a tragic emblem of this obsession. Known for her moonlit skin, she was celebrated in poetry and portraiture across the kingdom. Each morning, her attendants prepared her regimen: diluted arsenic, chalk dust, and vinegar wine. The formula bleached her skin but corroded her body from within. Her heartbeat slowed, her appetite vanished, and her once vibrant eyes grew hollow. Her decline was gradual, yet unmistakable.
Courtiers whispered admiration, mistaking sickness for sophistication.
Even as her health deteriorated, she continued the practice, unwilling to abandon the illusion that defined her rank. When she died at 28, her corpse retained the pallor she had so coveted. Physicians baffled by her demise recorded it as a case of noble consumption. In truth, her death was the natural consequence of fashion weaponized against the human body, a striking reminder that the era's ideals of purity were indistinguishable from decay. Mirrors were rare and precious in medieval society, reserved for aristocrats and royalty. They symbolized power, the ability to see oneself as others could not. Yet this privilege often proved destructive. Many women, consumed by their reflection, became victims of both psychological and physical deterioration. Lady Amara of Lorraine was renowned for her vanity. She commissioned a Venetian mirror framed in gold and spent hours daily perfecting her appearance. Her cosmetics, infused with mercury and alum, promised eternal youth. Over time, her behavior grew erratic. She suffered hallucinations, tremors, and episodes of delirium, symptoms now understood as mercury poisoning. Her attendants recalled how she began speaking to her reflection, convinced it was an apparition of divine beauty. One evening, she was found lifeless before the mirror, her fingers smeared with rouge and silver dust. Physicians called it madness, brought on by overexposure to spirits, unaware that her death was chemical, not spiritual. In the chronicles of the Lorraine court, she was remembered as both beautiful and cursed. The mirror that once reflected her pride became her judge, a silent witness. 2. The slow destruction, caused by vanity, mixed with poison. In the alchemical circles of the 15th century, scholars claimed that mercury possessed restorative powers. They distilled it into elixirs promising longevity and flawless skin. Wealthy women purchased these concoctions at staggering prices, ignorant of their toxic nature. Duchess Caterina of Siena was among the first to popularize this silver cure. Her court physician prescribed drops of mercurial tonic each morning to maintain her youth. Initially, the effects seemed miraculous. Her skin glowed, her wrinkles vanished, and her vitality returned. But within months, her gums blackened, her teeth loosened, and tremors seized her hands. As her condition worsened, she grew paranoid and delusional, convinced demons sought her beauty. Her attendants recorded how she screamed at shadows, her body shaking uncontrollably. The tonic that preserved her face destroyed her mind. When she finally succumbed, her features were eerily preserved, as though the poison had embalmed her. After her death, alchemists continued selling similar mixtures across Europe, branding them the Duchess's secret. Her tragedy became a commodity, her suffering transformed into advertisement. The elixir that promised immortality achieved it, not through preservation of life, but through the enduring legend of death disguised as beauty. Among the more macabre cosmetic practices of medieval Europe was the use of animal blood and crushed cochineal as rouge. The colors symbolized health and vitality, especially among women whose natural pallor had been drained by lead-based powders. Some, desperate for vibrancy, went further,
Drawing their own blood to mix with wax and wine for a more authentic shade.
Lady Beatrice of Toulouse was famed for her crimson cheeks, said to rival the color of roses in spring. In reality, her rouge was drawn nightly from her own veins. She believed that beauty required sacrifice, that the pain made her color purer. Over time, her wounds failed to heal, and infections set in. Still, she continued, terrified that without her blood paint, her suitors would turn away. Her final appearance at court was haunting. Pale lips, trembling hands, and a faint blush fading beneath the candlelight. That night, fever consumed her. By morning, she was gone, her rouge pot still warm, the surface stained with her last offering. Chroniclers later described her as a martyr of vanity, though the truth was simpler. Her pursuit of life's color had cost her her own. Medieval court attire was a spectacle of excess, towering sleeves, layered gowns, and fabrics so heavy that movement itself became perilous. Silk, imported from the East, symbolized wealth, yet its weight and poor ventilation created a deadly combination when paired with the era's open flames. At the court of King Charles VI, Lady Rosamond attended a winter banquet, wearing a gown of gold-threaded silk. Her train extended several feet behind her, carried by servants.
As she passed near the great hall's hearth, a single spark leapt from the fire, catching the edge of her gown.
Within seconds, the silk ignited. The material clung to her body, melting into her skin, as others struggled helplessly to extinguish the flames. Her screams echoed through the hall as courtiers watched in horror. Though she was wrapped in wet cloaks and carried away, the damage was irreversible. She died 3 days later, her once beautiful body unrecognizable.
Yet even in death, chroniclers remarked on her elegance, describing the radiance of her final appearance.
Her tragedy prompted minor safety reforms in court fashion, but vanity prevailed. Silk remained the fabric of choice, exquisite, expensive, and deadly. Lady Rosamond's death became a symbol of beauty's power to consume, both literally and figuratively. After the death of her husband, Lady Marguerite of Calais became the symbol of grace in mourning. Her beauty, pale as the moon, inspired songs and sermons alike. Behind this illusion lay her secret, a deadly cosmetic known as the Widow's Powder.
Made from crushed white lead, arsenic, and chalk, it promised a soft, sorrowful complexion worthy of sympathy.
Every morning, Marguerite's maid applied the powder to her face and neck. It gave her skin a porcelain sheen, concealing her grief beneath perfection.
But over months, the poison began to seep through her pores.
Her lips cracked, her gums bled, and a metallic taste haunted her tongue. Physicians claimed her weakness was caused by sadness, a romantic ailment befitting a widow. Despite her suffering, Marguerite continued her ritual. Her beauty had become her identity. To lose it would mean social death. One winter morning, she was found lifeless beside her vanity, her face immaculate, her hands frozen around a silver powder brush. Her funeral drew nobles from across France. They praised her for her devotion, her elegance, her tragic fragility. None realized that her true killer was hidden in the very jar she chose. In death, she embodied the perfect widow, silent, pale, and eternally beautiful, a saint sculpted by poison and pride. The late medieval courts of Italy were obsessed with extravagance, towering collars, gilded sleeves, and gowns embedded with gemstones so heavy they bruised the skin.
For noblewomen, discomfort was not a burden, but a badge of prestige.
The more pain a dress caused, the higher one's standing. Contessa Fiorenza of Milan was the very embodiment of elegance. Her tailors worked for weeks to craft a gown of brocade and bronze-threaded silk, its bodice reinforced with metal plates to enhance posture.
When she first wore it at a royal feast, guests gasped at her beauty statuesque, radiant, motionless.
But hours into the celebration,
her breathing grew labored.
The weight of the gown, nearly 40 pounds, crushed her ribs each time she stood. Servants urged her to rest, but she refused. She would not be seen as weak. Later that night, she collapsed, her body trapped in the armor of her own vanity. When they cut through the fabric, they found her chest bruised black, her ribs fractured beneath the corseted plates. The chroniclers wrote of her magnificent death, calling it an act of devotion to beauty. The gown that once symbolized power became a relic of suffering, a reminder that in the quest for elegance, mercy had no place.
When the Black Death swept across Europe, pale skin became both symbol and superstition.
People believed that those untouched by sunlight were spared infection. Desperate to survive, and to appear noble, women covered themselves in toxic powders and herbal elixirs, claiming to ward away the plague. In the city of Ghent, Lady Althea, a merchant's wife, created her own mixture of vinegar, powdered lead, and lavender oil. She spread it across her body daily, believing it to be divine protection. The concoction burned her skin, but she endured it with faith and vanity alike. Weeks later, blisters formed beneath her gown. Her fingers trembled, her hair fell, and her vision blurred. Physicians, fearing contagion, refused to treat her. Rumors spread that she was cursed, marked by the plague she tried to repel. But the truth was crueler. Her beauty elixir had become a slow poison. When she died, her neighbors avoided her house, convinced the disease lingered. Only her maid knew the truth, that Lady Althea had never been ill with plague, only consumed by the fear and fashion that imitated it. Her death became a whispered warning. Vanity and terror can wear the same mask. In the name of purity, medieval beauty regimens grew disturbingly cruel. Many noblewomen practiced bloodletting and leech therapy,
believing that releasing impure blood would cleanse the skin and preserve youth.
the more blood drawn, the more flawless the complexion, or so they thought. Lady Isadora of Wessex was celebrated for her ageless beauty. Her secret, a physician who drained her blood every full moon. The sessions left her dizzy, her lips white, her pulse faint, but the compliments she received filled her with pride. When her color faded, she turned to another trick, applying leeches behind her ears and jawline to soften her features.
Months later, her strength vanished entirely.
Her heart struggled to recover from repeated blood loss. Yet she insisted on one final session before the king's midsummer feast. That night, she fainted in the great hall, her skin radiant, but her heart silent. The king ordered her portrait to be painted as she appeared, angelic, serene, untouched by time. Only the painter noticed the tiny bruises at her jaw, the evidence of her secret ritual.
Lady Isadora became immortal, not through youth,
but through death, proof that beauty, when fed with blood, demands the ultimate price. Before electric light, medieval feasts and balls were illuminated by thousands of candles.
Nobles coveted a skin tone that glowed gently in the flicker of flame.
To achieve this, apothecaries sold bombs made from phosphorus, lead, and crushed fireflies, known as moon oils. The effect was dazzling and deadly. Countess Helene of Prague was the first to popularize the trend. Her skin shimmered softly under candlelight, earning her the nickname the Living Flame. Admirers believed her radiance divine. She revealed her secret only to her closest attendants, who prepared the mixture nightly. But after months of use, Helene's health deteriorated. Her skin blistered, her lips cracked, and her veins pulsed visibly beneath her arms. Still, she continued, fame was intoxicating. During a royal banquet, a servant brushed against her arm, and her skin began to peel. The phosphorus had burned through her flesh. She died within days, her body glowing faintly even in death, a ghostly radiance caused by the toxins still within her. Courtiers marveled at the sight, calling her a miracle. None dared admit
That her beauty was a product of chemistry and suffering.
the glow she desired became her funeral light, proof that vanity can make even death luminous. In the 14th century, the noble courts of Burgundy demanded impossible figures, narrow waists, straight backs, and high busts that defied nature. Dressmakers answered this demand with a gruesome invention, corsets made from whalebone, iron, and even human rib fragments.
Lady Genevieve of Artois, a young bride, eager to impress her husband, owned the tittest corset in France.
Her maid laced her each morning until her breathing turned shallow and her face flushed blue. Pain became a form of discipline, a reminder that beauty required sacrifice.
At feasts, Genevieve appeared regal and composed, though every movement stabbed her ribs.
One night, while dancing, she felt a sudden snap beneath her chest. She gasped, smiled to hide it, and continued the waltz. By dawn, she was dead. A broken rib had pierced her lung. Her husband ordered that she be buried in the same corset, claiming she looked most divine in it. The church refused to condemn the garment, calling her death an accident of grace. But among the servants, whispers spread. The corset had devoured its maker. And so, her legend lived, the woman whose beauty was carved from her bones and whose elegance became her tomb. In the perfumed salons of Paris, crimson lips were the height of desirability. To achieve this hue, apothecaries crafted rouge from mercury sulfide cinnabar, a toxic mineral mined in Spain. Its glow was alluring, its tastes metallic, its cost fatal.
Duquesserin. Edie Mom envied for her ruby lips, never appeared in public without her cinnabar paint.
Edmura said her smile could stop a man's heart.
They didn't know it was stopping hers, too.
Over the years, her mouth began to tremble, her teeth loosened, and her tongue swelled. She laughed it off as a lady's inconvenience. But soon, she could no longer eat or speak without pain.
The physicians called it a divine punishment for vanity.
Her final days were spent surrounded by mirrors, whispering prayers through bloodied lips. When she died, her face was still radiant, the rouge perfectly intact. The court called her death a romantic mystery. In truth, she was the victim of a fashion so deadly, it glimmered brighter than life itself. Her rouge, preserved in a gilded jar, remained in her family's collection for decades. No one dared open it again, for they said even the air inside was cursed with her last breath. Eyes were the dream of many medieval ladies, though nature rarely granted them, so alchemists offered a cruel alternative. Eye drops infused with copper, verdigris, and belladonna, claiming to brighten the whites and deepen the iris. Lady Celine of Navarre was one of the first to try it. Each morning, her maid dripped emerald green tears into her eyes. The sting was unbearable, but the results were astonishing. Her gaze shimmered like gemstones. Soon, other noblewomen followed her example, and Celine became a beauty icon. Yet as weeks passed, her vision dimmed. She stumbled while walking, mistaking candlelight for daylight. Still, she insisted on continuing the drops. Vanity had become her faith. Eventually, she went completely blind.
Rather than retreat,
She began hosting twilight salons, where her beauty was lit by candles and described aloud by others. They said she looked otherworldly, like a saint carved from emerald stone. When she died, her eyes were found blackened, the cornea scarred beyond recognition, but her portraits remained radiant, painted from memory, a woman who traded her sight for admiration. Her blindness became the final proof that in the medieval pursuit of beauty, even vision was a worthy sacrifice. In the Kingdom of Bohemia, brides were expected to shine brighter than gold. To achieve this, wealthy families commissioned veils woven with gold thread and dusted with powdered mercury, a shimmering masterpiece that symbolized divine favor. Bride Ilona Voss, only 16, wore such a veil at her wedding. As she walked toward the altar, the crowd gasped at her brilliance. The golden cloth caught every flicker of candlelight. Beneath it, however, Ilona struggled to breathe. The fumes from the mercury-infused threads filled her lungs. During the vows, her voice cracked. By the time her groom lifted the veil for the kiss, her skin was pale, her lips trembling. That night, she collapsed in her wedding gown, the metallic scent lingering in the air. The church claimed her death was caused by holy exhaustion, but her attendants knew better. The gold that crowned her had poisoned her blood. Her veil was buried with her, sealed forever inside a crystal case. Years later, legend said her ghost still appeared in the chapel, her veil glowing faintly in the moonlight. A reminder that even beauty blessed by heaven can be forged in death's hands. Long before glass mirrors were common, noblewomen prized polished metal mirrors coated with mercury. They offered a distorted but dazzling reflection, one that often became an obsession. Lady Corvina of Lothair spent hours each day gazing into hers. The mirror seemed to whisper, showing her not as she was, but as she wished to be. She began skipping meals, avoiding sunlight, and applying powders to match the pale, perfect face within the reflection. Servants grew fearful. They claimed she spoke to the mirror, asking it to preserve her youth. One night, they found her collapsed before it, her face pressed to the metal surface. The fumes from years of polishing with mercury had poisoned her lungs and mind alike. Her final expression was one of serenity, as if she had finally become the woman in the mirror. Her possessions were burned, but the mirror was locked in the family vault, rumored to be cursed. They say those who stare into it too long still see her beautiful, unblinking, and waiting. For in the medieval world, vanity was not just sin. It was a mirror that reflected death itself. In the cold monasteries of northern England, modesty was a virtue above all else. Noblewomen were taught to cover every inch of skin, even in sleep. The fashion that emerged from this faith was suffocating. Heavy silk veils wrapped around the head and neck, layered beneath embroidered wimples. Lady Clare of Winton, renowned for her piety, took this custom to extremes. She refused to show her face to men outside her family, binding her head each morning until only her eyes remained visible. The silk pressed against her throat and ears, making every breath shallow, every sound distant. One summer, during a pilgrimage, Claire fainted under the sun. Her attendants loosened her veil. but she refused their help, whispering, "Better to die pure than live unveiled." That night, she passed away in her sleep, smothered by her devotion. Her story spread across England as an example of holy modesty, and young women began to imitate her style. Not knowing that it had killed her, even in death, Lady Clare remained covered from crown to chin, her silk veil glimmering faintly in the candlelight, a symbol of faith that demanded her final breath. In medieval France, beauty baths were a luxury of nobility. It was believed that soaking in hot mineral water mixed with light milk and herbs would cleanse the skin and restore youth. Physicians warned against it, but fashion often silenced reason. Marquise Delphine de Rouing was obsessed with purity. She spent hours each morning preparing her miracle bath, a mix of boiling water, goat's milk, and rose ash. Her attendants begged her to let it cool, but she refused, claiming that pain proved the cleansing worked. One morning, as she stepped into the steaming tub, her skin blistered instantly. She screamed but would not climb out, convinced that the pain was the body releasing sin. When silence finally fell, her servants found her submerged, the water red and still. Her death was declared a divine act of purification. The nobles whispered that she had ascended to heaven untainted, yet her attendants knew the truth. She had been consumed by her own vanity. Her flesh literally boiled in pursuit of beauty. Her marble bath was sealed and never used again, forever remembered as the pool that burned away the living. In Venice, perfume was both luxury and armor. Nobles believed that pleasant scents warded off illness and signaled divine favor. But the most prized perfumes contained arsenic, mercury, and sulfur oils. Their fragrance enchanting, their fumes lethal. Countess Beatrice d'Este was the queen of scent. Her perfume, essence of heaven, was said to linger in corridors long after she passed. Composed of roses, amber, and mercury extract, it shimmered like sunlight trapped in glass. Over months, her health began to fail. Her breath grew shallow, her skin sallow, her mind clouded by dizziness. Physicians called it vapors of melancholy. She laughed through her coughing fits, saying, "At least I shall die smelling divine." When she finally succumbed, the scent of her perfume filled the entire villa. Servants fainted while preparing her body, overcome by the same fumes that had killed her. Her crystal perfume bottle was sealed inside her tomb, a warning unheeded. To this day, Venetian legends say that if one smells roses and mercury in an empty corridor, it means the Countess has returned, still perfumed, still deadly. In the harsh winters of the Baltic courts, noblewomen fought the cold's toll on their skin with frozen masks made from snow, wine, and alum powder. They believed the cold tightened the face, keeping it smooth and ageless. Lady Edoda Fonfokun, admired for her youthful looks at 40, became obsessed with her nightly ritual. Servants packed her face in crushed ice until her cheeks turned pale blue. She claimed it locked the years away. One winter night, during a blizzard, she left her mask on too long while praying by an open window. Hours later, her maid found her frozen solid, her skin cracked like porcelain. Her expression was peaceful. Forever young, forever cold. The next spring, her statue-like beauty became a legend. Artists painted her as the Ice Saint, a woman who defied age through devotion. But her servants remembered the truth. She had frozen herself in the name of vanity. Her frozen beauty became her curse, eternity achieved through frost and foolishness. In Prague, a new invention swept the royal court glass jewelry. Transparent beads and pendants symbolized purity and perfection. The queen's favorite piece was a corsage of thin glass petals that glittered like morning dew. Princess Radomira, eager to impress her mother, commissioned a bodice entirely decorated with glass shards. It caught the light beautifully, but every movement risked disaster. During a midsummer ball, while bowing to the king, one shard snapped. The entire corsage shattered across her chest, slicing through her skin. Dancers screamed as blood stained her gown like rubies. Physicians tried to save her, but the wounds were too deep. In her final words, Ludmila whispered, "It was beautiful, wasn't it? The queen ordered the shards buried with her, saying her daughter's beauty could not be contained. The glass bodice became a forbidden fashion, a relic of deadly elegance. And so ended the age of fragile grace, when women wore beauty like armor, only to be slain by its edge.